Great. So, welcome everyone to today's CSE Development in Action webinar. This webinar is on Girls in STEM, a case study of a secondary school in Nairobi. I'm also pleased to inform you all that I'm aware we have with us many new scholars who have just joined this webinar. This will be your first CSE Development in Action webinar, so I do hope you enjoy this webinar and you take this time to learn more about the work of Commonwealth Alumnus Margaret Kamau, who I will introduce very shortly. So a huge welcome to all new scholars and the alumni and existing scholars and alumni who have joined this webinar today. Um, as you know, this webinar will mark International Literacy Day, which we are celebrating today, 8th of September. This year, the theme of International Literacy Day will be literacy teaching and learning in the COVID-19 crisis and beyond, with a focus on the role of educators and changing teaching practices. With this, I would like to let you know that Margaret would be sharing her skills and expertise on this topic, and Margaret is currently the educational technical lead at an FCDO-funded Girls Education Challenge project with Education Development Trust in Kenya. She has over 20 years of experience in the educational sector as a project designer and manager. Margaret is a 24th Commonwealth Distant Learner Scholar from Kenya. She completed an MA in Education and International Development at the UCA Institute of Education. So with this, on behalf of the CSE alumni team and all the scholars and alumni joining us today, I would love to welcome Margaret. And Margaret, really, thank you so much for joining us today and presenting on this topic. I'm very eager to hear more about your project and also learn more about girls' education and your role in advocating for this in Kenya. So with this, over to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Margaret, as you've been told, and my presentation will be on a girls project that I did. Take note of the theme we are having there in the Commonwealth Scholarship: access, inclusion, and opportunity. That's what I want to address on behalf of girls and science and mathematics. I've already had my introduction. That's me, overseeing a project that is reaching 70,000 girls in marginalized context here in Kenya, and glad that I was able to go through my studies in the UCL and MA in Education International Development, and gender was one of the major areas of study and has been one of my areas of implementation. I'll keep telling you the stories. So the Commonwealth has an alumni community engagement fund, and it is an annual fund which seeks to support Commonwealth alumni in raising awareness of key development issues at the community level through the organization of a community-focused engagement activity. And in this year, beginning last year, this year, the ASEF theme has been girls' education, exploring how access to schools and learning levels can be improved for girls so that they can achieve their full potential. So my activity was a STEM, the science, technology, mathematics mentorship camp for girls in a school in my local town. I will be covering, therefore, background of this school, the intervention, school and the community, the rationale why I did the intervention, the activity design, expected outcomes, how I carried out the activities and the reports around that, the impact, immediate and future impact of these activities, and the lessons that I learned. For 1 minute, let's connect. In your context, what factors influence girls' participation, progress, and achievement in STEM education? Could you kindly chat for 1 minute? Give me a thought, a word or two, the factors that influence the girls' participation, progress, and achievement in science and mathematics education. I'll pick the first 5. Oh yeah, thank you. Role models are important. Natural inclinations, I'll talk about that. Any other thought? Oh yeah, progressive, that's true. They want to be progressive. And that impacts on background information, yeah. So social economic determinants. And I think what we can say is on and on and on. Depending on where you are, girls want to participate, progress, and achieve in science and mathematics, but perhaps there are factors that could hinder them. So this is what I did. I chose a school in a context that is challenged. Our Lady of Mercy Girls Secondary School, established in 1962, and it is in the informal settlements of Mukuru slums in Nairobi, Kenya. So that was very specific, the informal settlements, because there are lots of challenges in girls accessing school, then staying in school, performing in school, then transitioning. The school has an aim of providing quality education for girls and to prepare them to undertake various professions, including those in STEM. Our strategic plan in this country recommends and has an emphasis on the need to create gender-sensitive and effective learning environment as a priority for schools in urban informal settlements. So that is where this intervention fits in, because it is addressing a strategy need and priority area for our government, and that is a current one. The same plan also says there is need for enhancement of quality of STEM subjects with an emphasis on more activity-based learning and development of skills and interests that can attract many students to STEM, technical, and vocational fields. When I met the principal of this school, she was actually formerly head of a school I was supervising in my project, but she moved to a school that for her, the results were worrying. On your left of your screen, you will see targets of the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education. So that is the examination done by end of Form 4 examination. And to the right of the same image, you will see numbers 7.8 and 7.0, 3.5 etc. And right below there is a mean score of 6.89. Basically, the government scores a student aggregately by a point, so it will be between 1 and 12, and 12 is the best. So you'll notice the mean score for this school is on the average, but really what is bringing it down is the average of the sciences. So the school has had a continuous decline in science performance for years, and it is currently having a low ambition, as far as I'm concerned, of an average of 4.2. Why I say a low ambition? Because if you check on the left again, you will see subjects like geography and history having an achievable and a high ambition of 8.5 and 8.5 and 9.0. So there is a disparity there. For the same student, you expect a high score, especially in the art subjects, and expect them and have an anticipation that they're going to perform poorly in the sciences. And that was the beginning of a conversation I've had with that principal. And altogether we said, with the lessons that we learned in our project, now she is in a non-project school. Can we see whether we can apply some of the things we've done there to turn around the results? Track with me. The first thing for this intervention was to compare what the principal is talking about and literature. And it is against that that I came up with a survey. So in January of 2022, this year, I did a survey among the students, among the teachers. And let me give you some quick highlights of what I found in the school. Look at the students' report to your left of your screen. What is in red for me was the highlight of my worry. When 47% of the girls in that school would want to drop sciences if they had an opportunity. So basically, half of the school is enduring sciences because it is mandatory and they have to sit for an exam for it. I think that's a very worrying place for any teacher and any school to be in. The same students, 15% of them, only 15% indicated that they explore scientific concepts beyond the classroom. So you can see their level of inquisitivity is that low. Only a third of them had strategies to improve science. Now you may ask, what of the teachers? Many scenarios. One of the things I think the teachers were complaining was saying, we don't seem to be having very good parental support. Only 17% of them said their students ever get even a suggestion by the parents to take science-based careers. So of course, if you don't get the support from school, then you do not think you can perform. Then of course you don't engage and you actually don't pass very well. 58% of the teachers did not think students have ability to make scientific presentation. Now you can see there is another challenge there. 8% indicated majority of the students are aware of their strengths and weaknesses in sciences. And then for me, I think what is the biggest and the hugest worry among the teachers is that 17% of them, only 17% are confident of their ability to address STEM teaching barriers. So we have half the school of students wanting to drop off and only less than a half, if not less than a quarter of the teachers who feel they have an ability to turn around the situation. So I came up with a model with the funding I got from ASEF, and it was going to be a mentorship camp. It was a composite of activities. And you will notice from my model that there are many things that are contributing to the student STEM achievement. Everything from the school administration, they needed support around policies and leadership. Talk of the teacher behavior, from planning and how they carry out instruction. The teacher characteristic, even their self-efficacy, do they believe they have the ability to deliver? Their subject content area, assessment is major, gender responsiveness and activity-based pedagogy. Community, we expect them to bring in mentorship and support. Parents also giving their support. Student characteristics, prior knowledge, motivation, career knowledge, self-efficacy. In other words, all these many pieces needed to be addressed if we were to expect a turnaround in the student STEM achievement. What was my expected outcome for this STEM camp? One, to have an enhanced STEM learning strategies for learners. Two, improved strategies to deliver gender responsive and activity-based teaching for the teachers. Enhanced awareness of STEM career choices for the learners is the third, and the fourth was to have an increased awareness of parent and community members of their role in supporting STEM for the learning of their girls. So for my camp, it was a composite of activities. You'll notice some of them ran even before the January, all the way to February. Everything, we had teacher training and mentorship, we had students training, we had STEM career talks, parent and community engagement. We bought some equipment for them because that was one of the challenge. So students can engage in activity-based learning and inquiry because they don't actually have this equipment to manipulate. And culminating to all this was the participation of 100% of the girls in the school science exhibition day. So a quick one on the teacher training. On the bottom of your screen, you'll notice that I worked with partners. So the teachers had a variety of challenges that needed to be addressed. And I did not come there purporting to know everything. And number two, I didn't want them to be dependent on me. So I brought in people and organizations that they can work with even beyond this activity. So the Young Scientists of Kenya, they normally hold science fairs at a national level. So I wanted the school to eventually start participating and exhibiting science fair items. Semastia, who are a continental science and mathematics capacity building organization, and actually in the picture. The one speaking is actually from Semastia. Mangu High School is a model school. St. Thomas Girls is another model school for the girls, and they actually participated in coming all the way to staying with the teachers, staying with the students, having dialogue with them, and really engaging with the school. St. Teresa's Girls also came in. It's a neighboring school from the slum areas, while improving in their results. So I wanted the two schools to link up because they have been very good in turning around their results, as well as other engagements, the parental engagement, how to do career choices. They were very good with that. The Ministry of Education, again, these are teams that I work with on a day-to-day basis. So for me, it was easy to bring them on board. The Ministry of Education, the Science and Engineering Fair Committee. So the teachers here had the benefit of gleaning from all these people and participated in trainings, not just a training. I will just quickly just tell you some of their own inquiries, because you need to know that as I did this intervention, I am bringing in an intervention, but it needs to be co-created with other people. So they had their own challenges that they are saying, okay, you want us to have results? I need to know how to change the students' mindset. I need to know how to do timely syllabus coverage, ICT integration, STEM teaching, cultivating a reading and a high performance culture, STEM career evolution. They were saying, we want to engage and deliver, but these are our circumstances. So the conversations went beyond just saying, let's have activity-based learning. It was addressing all these expectations and undercurrents. The other thing I did was the parent and community engagement. And you will notice there, the first picture, we actually did a conversation with the community through a local radio station. And that's myself in yellow and the principal, who was very, very engaged in this whole process. And that was a way of really just awakening the community that this school is turning around in terms of science, mathematics. Why don't you bring your schools? Consider to bring your children there. And when they come, they will pass. But also, you have a role as a community to support them in every way. Second picture was a conversation I had with the parents. Literally, the parents are lifting up a written aspiration for their children. I found a school where there were little camps. The school is not too sure. The parents are very supportive. But the parents, when I engage with them, they lift up and say, I would like my child to be a lawyer. I would like them to be a judge. I'd like them to be an engineer. And that really thawed the conversation between the parents and the school. And I think that was very necessary. On your right there is myself having a presentation in a national TV station on the International Day of Women and Girls. So we needed to engage the parents and really just have a conversation. Then we had the Science Fair Day. And okay, let me give you the history. This school has been in existence for 60 years. They had never had a Science Fair Day. And what is a Science Fair Day? It was to tell the students, because they have gone through the training with the science, the young scientists. They have been shown the protocols of how to think scientifically, make inquiries, go to literature, make inquiries, have a problem statement, have a solution, do dummies, do presentations, and they will be judged. That is what the science fair was all about. So you can imagine a school for 60 years that had never conceptualized students engaging with anything beyond the classroom, suddenly had so many ideas. Because remember, one of the things I did, I actually brought in a school from 1,000 kilometers away, who are girls who are faring well in sciences. And they came and stayed with them and really talked them into thinking, it is possible for girls to do well. It's possible to have national and even international level projects to exhibit. And I think that really brought the ideas close home. So from no day to a big day of science fair, and they were very excited about it. And we actually had 41 projects that were vetted and presented on that day. It was a whole Saturday, and children had the whole school compound to come up with the workstation and do exhibition. So they had a lot of time to do their inquiries, their reading, do models, then present. And a few of them are what I've put there. You can see there's a mathematical rubric cubes. So one of the students says, I like playing around with cubes. Why don't I turn it into some information in mathematics? The next one was a dissection. The school had never dissected anything, not a rat, not a rabbit for 60 years. And these attracted real excitement in the school, and especially because the students were personally involved in splitting open. And you could see that all the children, you mean this, the inside, you mean these are the organs you've been learning in biology. The next one was actually an innovation as far as I'm concerned. It was actually the winning piece. Science teaching aids are a challenge in the country. So these students who were both science and art students came up with an idea. We struggled to see the bones as the teacher is teaching out there. So they actually took a real bone and made replica of that using paper mache and colored it. And they were so precise because they are artists, so precise. I think that can fetch some good amount of money if I follow up with them. And the next is an improvised cooking fuel. So usually in the slum areas, people would cook with a jiko, what we call a jiko there, it's a burner. And then instead of having charcoal, because the parents can't afford charcoal, you can see the students came up with an idea of using charcoal dust, which is very common. It's like a residue from a charcoal heap. And paper is very common in the slum areas. Let's say dirty paper, floating paper around the compounds. So they were able to mash that and be able to make fuel from that. And one of the students said, at least I have a solution for my own homestead. And that is an immediate one I can apply when I go home. Many other things. They talked about hydroelectric power. They talked of, can I come up with a watch that can help send an alarm if I come across anything alarming? And you could see they're thinking about the environment. They're saying, what if I step on over a live wire or an explosive? And I know they know people who've died over that. So they're thinking, if only I had something smart that can alert me, you're in a high voltage area, escape. That's the kind of thinking they had. The next one there is the mathematics cube. So they're saying, the teacher is ever telling us, change, rotate shapes. Why don't we use this to help us do that? So you will realize the learners actually came up with projects, models, and protocols. Even the next one here is a big mathematics spin wheel. It was huge. And basically, again, it's students who are saying, for quick revision, if we put the spin up, we can keep spinning it when out for break, when I dash to the toilet. It can give me a quick recall of concepts that we have learned. And apparently, this covered the whole syllabus, summarized in this spin. I told them, I think that's viable. You will realize our students had really great environmental consciousness. They are aware of their own challenges and were thinking, okay, we learned this science in sciences and mathematics, can it apply back home? So one team said, we have a lot of waterborne diseases and that's very common in the slum areas. So they came up with a homemade water filter. I talked of the emergencies, watches, smart watches. So if we have stroke, remember, you need to walk in the slums to have a clue what this means. For them, when somebody is unwell, to get the information is urgent. To jump through small alleys and get to the tarmac road and get help is quite complicated. So for them, they're thinking, how do I save time? How do I get this patient out? This is the next one. Biocella was again a project. One of the groups said, we want to create an energy for fruit and vegetable waste. That's very common in the slum areas. You'll find heaps and heaps of vegetable waste. So they're saying, I think it can, we've read this in the sciences. I think we can think of a project of creating electrical energy, trash eliminators, solar powered remote control. That was funny because they think we want to watch our television, there's no power. Either they have tapped into illegal power and therefore the government has cut it, or whatever. There's no power in the slum area. So they're saying, let's think of solutions. I think a solar powered remote control can work. And I talked about the hydroelectric power generation that can be generated using and reusing sewer that flows, very common in the slum area. So these learners and girls actually were very conscious of the issues that they face at home, but also were conscious of things they've learned in sciences, and they thought we can apply that. One of the greatest things we did in that school was, together with myself, the principal, the science fair people was to train these teachers on something they hadn't known before. That one, students can actually come up with projects, and there are protocols for that. But number two, after they have done that, how do we make sense of it? So they were taught on adjudication skills. And right on your screen, you will notice a lot of teachers there looking very busy, everybody looking in great detail. The one on the left is looking great detail on some measurement of an instrument we actually bought with the fund. The rest of the teachers are a whole lot of science teachers, all involved. I mean, the whole school was consumed with this science fair. I wanted to just catch this teacher applying the learning adjudication skills so that you can also have an idea. Let me see what some of it. They were saying we will judge by their presentation, originality, relevance to the Millennium Goals, technical alignment. I mean, you could tell the school is shifting from saying we are not interested in sciences to suddenly they're talking about technical alignment and organization and adjudication and confidence, ability. For me, this, and by the way, I had nothing to do with coming up with these tools. Remember, mine was to catalyze change. So I actually brought them and exposed them to other schools that are doing this. I exposed them to judges in the science fair. And with that, they actually sat down and notice this one is actually saying for every subject. So they had adjudication sheet for physics, chemistry, biology, computers, and it was a very exciting day. Well, I need to let you know, we ended with taking sodas and a big shout with everybody saying, yes, we did it. For careers, remember, these are the same students who don't get good support from the parents. So one of the exciting things that we were able to do was have conversations. I was able to hold conversations with them. And this is actually a class, I took this picture myself. And it is getting to hear their mind, what do you know of careers? Then bringing people to talk to them about careers. Then later on, come back and find out, have we made progress? So it was very interesting. This school had the usual imagination, I'll be a teacher, I'll be a doctor, I'll be a lawyer, and that's just about the only thinking they have on careers. But because of exposure, suddenly we start hearing things like, I'll be involved in analytical chemistry and architecture and building construction, food science and technology, aeronautic engineering, quantity surveying. I'm talking about big terms. And for me, that was the beginning of a shift also in the way they envision, not just the science that they're doing, but the application. What was the impact? Track with me. This for me is very important. What was the impact among the students? I did a baseline with them in January. I did a repeat in March. Look at some of the changes. I discussed with my friends on strategies to improve our science performance. There was an improvement. So these are percent of learners. So 34% of the learners in the school initially were having strategies and could discuss with friends, but that grew by the end of all these composite interventions. I prefer to listen in group settings rather than contribute directly to discussions. No students were saying, no, now I want to participate. I used definite strategies in order to achieve my targets in science subjects. Oh yeah, that improved greatly. I'm comfortable with sharing my strengths and weaknesses to my teachers, parents, and even fellow students. So generally, there was improvement on very different indicators. And these indicators, I actually drew them from literature. So I was also testing literature, whether from literature to practice, does that play out? I'm confident in my ability to make presentations. I am confident to achieve my performance. I'm confident in my ability to perform experiments. Now you can see a huge change from 33% to 60%. They were saying, give us this another opportunity, we'll want to get involved. I like hands-on experiments. It grew. I seek connections between different concepts, grew slightly. I explore science concept beyond the classroom. They said, oh yeah, this needs interrogation. And basically, I think what we needed to learn, and I learned, is of course, you can't turn around a school within 3 months. And it is okay to allow learners to grow until they gain their confidence. I'm now considering pursuing a career in a science field. Apparently, some students thought, initially I thought, now maybe they saw the rigors of preparing and they thought, I need to rethink this idea. And for me, that's all right. That's still part of the growth. What are some of their voices? What were they saying? When I asked, what is the most important lesson you learned from the science fair? One said that anyone can become creative and innovative if they want, including girls. And I felt really motivated. I learned technology and actual STEM subjects is the best way to go. Please be in the know that this is the school where half of the children wanted to run away from school if they had a choice, simply because of sciences. Let me do the one on the right, one of the Form 1 students, and that is where the school culture comes in. A student comes into the school. I hope if you're a linguist here, you're able to pick undercurrents in this statement. I got to know that people do not have to fail in the same subjects. It's about the choices they make, mindset, and lack of determination. I'm really thankful that this day gave me a chance to overcome my fear of crowds and STEM subjects. So usually when the children are coming from primary school to secondary schools, they are enthusiastic. That I can guarantee you. It's a new place. I've come to show that I've achieved, but you find a poisoned environment. So you can see this from one student saying, thank goodness, this came right on time. I've changed around my mind and my fears of the STEM subjects. We can tell what the school has been discussing. When the students come in, they're told Form 1s, be on the lookout. STEM is a bit something, it's a bit hard. But I want you to notice the bottom remark. I really do not know how to appreciate my teachers for trusting us to carry out the day and show that what we have. For me, there is undercurrents right there about trust. The students are saying, we're not too sure our teachers trusted. Maybe, and if you've done gender-based responsive pedagogy, you know the undercurrents. Maybe the teachers will only give you the responsibility of wiping the board, but not dissecting the rabbit on your own. So that needed to change in the environment. The teachers to release the space for the students to do it and explore. And that is what STEM skills are all about. But also the students growing in their ability to be trusted and then showing themselves trustworthy. One other change is about careers. 93% of the students who are clearing the school were able to fill in their career courses selection. It's a government process. This is not the usual. And I'll just read very quickly through the extract from the teacher who's in charge of careers. She said, in the past, students lack information on careers. They pick courses for the sake of it. I believe the career talk gave the students an idea of what courses entail and work placement. Selection of science careers by 47% of students is not usual for our school. The students have responded positively to the science effort for the term. Even in other classes, they've become active in science areas. Giving them a chance to participate in science projects was encouraging, and they now see science subjects as not as hard as they thought. The students took it seriously and further requested if they can discuss their career choices with their parents. Let me just tell you, we call that transformation. What of the teachers? Any change? I picked this from the teacher, one of the teachers of science and mathematics. We at Our Lady of Mercy Secondary School decided to organize a STEM fun day and try. You get it? And see if it can work for us. That's the status I found that school in. They were not too sure whether this will make a difference, whether there is capacity. At first, we were not too sure if this new path would yield results, but the results were tremendous. I can tell you, it was a long trying to convince them and work with them. What are some of the changes that we saw? When I asked them if this is true of themselves, January, and then in March, I will just pick one or two of them. One that for me was very telling is when they say, I am confident in my ability to address school-based prohibitive factors in the engagement of learners in STEM. At the beginning of the year, only 17% of the teachers would say, I have the confidence to address whatever is happening in here about prohibitive factors in STEM performance. By the end of all this interaction with different people from different schools and institutions, that turned around to 71%. Let me pick one other, maybe the last one for the sake of time. Majority of my students are aware of their strengths and weaknesses, particularly in sciences. It moved from 8% of the teachers to 57%. And basically, if you look at the bars, it is moving from the red to the blue, change between January and March. Everything from their knowledge about gender factors, parental engagement. My students use defined strategies. By the way, did you know that part of why there was more information is because the students were actually now coming and the teachers were also interacting with the students more. And together they were able to realize these are the weaknesses, these are the potential, this is what I can do with the students. So it is a two-way engagement that really turned around both their perception and also their engagement. Allow me to jump over to the next page. The impact on teachers. One of the teachers of biology said, in the class I teach, I stop teaching and now facilitate learning. I give activities that involve learners such as peer teaching, presentation, group discussions, and students doing drawings and models. Remember, this was completely unheard of before I went there. Teaching and learning is now interesting. For biology, it is really working. I wonder why we did not do this any earlier. And sometimes it is just moving the agenda when people are not sure, they don't have the movement in their school, they just haven't collected themselves towards the change that can be. But when you catalyze that, and especially by giving examples and by having it hands-on, it's believable other than just coming and telling them with a workshop and one of those. So what is my immediate and future impact of these activities? Remember, I did a camp, and this camp was to turn around results. How does this impact anything? One is that these activities enhance self-confidence, the self-belief, the self-efficacy among learners towards the STEM subjects. And I hope it is okay for me to also say among the teachers. So self-belief is so important to turn around results. You can imagine the students who are given the biology book and told, go and figure out how to bring that rabbit under, and we just want to see the insides. For the learner, that self-belief, I can, the self-confidence, the self-efficacy, as well as that teacher who couldn't trust, they thought they're the only ones who are the carriers of knowledge, but now could see their own students replicating their teaching aids and making it more visible and addressing an actual scenario, an actual situation. Newer and teaching and assessment methods were introduced. For me, that was exciting, including activity-based teaching. This was introduced in the school. Clarity on science concepts through demonstration and project-based learning. Other changes include enhanced STEM school culture. Remember, the environment determines actually the results. It determines what people believe, what space they create. So for example, in this school, they actually came up with this. They said it was so exciting, it must go in the annual school calendar of events. This is after 60 years of the existence of the school. So this is what a change can be. Internalized protocols for future participation in National Science Fair. The school, I think, is now ready. They were mentored thoroughly on this. Mentorship and linkages for the school with other schools and government agencies. I've already told you about that. Capabilities valued at workplace, also inculcated. And sometimes I think we think of sciences from the experiment point of view, but as you give them opportunities for collaboration, you're also giving them opportunities to grow in all the other being a team member, critical thinking. And this is also as valuable at the workplace. The lessons learned will also be incorporated in the Ministry of Education's STEM education policy that is being revised. And I want to tell you that that is already happening. We participated in infusing these lessons even into the education policy. And what that means is it becomes mandatory. It goes into the documents for quality assurance, supervising of schools. It goes into the exchequer, giving schools money to do science fair. So it has a huge implication when it sits in policy. And then we have viable science projects, which I think can be incubated and made into viable entrepreneurial ventures. The school that came to mentor actually had some of they actually made some flour, some fortified flour. So they actually brought it and sold to the students in the school, including myself, and it was a lovely porridge. So that was a very, and the students, the girls from the other school, the St. Thomas would say, we made this porridge, we are selling it, we are getting money out of it. And that was very interesting. What lessons did I learn personally as a scholar, because I consider myself a scholar, and then I consider myself a practitioner. And don't think it was all rosy, just in case you live with that thought. One is the need to co-construct the problem identification and the solution model with beneficiaries and their influencers. So for the 3 months of engagement, I think I took almost a half of that period that I had just at the construction level. Remember, you're turning around perception, you're turning around people's experiences, mindset. When you say we shall have a science fair, they're thinking we don't have time, it's interfering in everything. So you're having to change that. It will even make a difference. So giving time for, and for me who does project management, always I've got to remember, way before you rush into implementation, co-construct the problem identification and solution. 2, allow for co-financing. It increases ownership for this and any other activity. So in this case, I think the ASEF funding was about £500, and the school was able to give about £70. What you need to know is that was good. Any money that they could bring in, because they were saying we shall bring in whatever is within the compound. If there's something that needs to be purchased, will also go out. That was showing increased ownership, not of the activity, but of the concept. Embedding sustainability mechanisms from the beginning will reduce dependability on you. And I think that I've mentioned, give room for the beneficiaries to shape the change you want. And that included the inconveniences I told you about, delays. As school committees sat down and thought, do we want this thing? What shall we do with this thing? Will students be for it? Do we have the time? We've never done it. We've never seen anybody do it anyway. Plan ahead of the implementation period to allow for any eventualities, including the buying in period. Procurement, etc. also. If working with children, you must have clear safeguarding mechanisms. And I know the ASEF was very, very strict on safeguarding mechanisms. I had to say if there is a fire, what I shall do. I'll need to know what will happen if there are open fires and open wires. It was a good exercise too. Collaborate, and I think that was also something that I gained from this exercise. Just being reminded about safeguarding mechanisms appropriate for this activity, but also for activities that I do. Collaborate with other like-minded partners. I mean, I had scores of people I would just call upon. You come and deliver on this portion, you come and deliver on the other portion. Even in the science fair day, we actually had the young scientists bring in their adjudicators, their national adjudicators, to come and assess alongside with the teachers, and also give the teachers confidence that they have understood the protocols of assessment. And of course, best is to base solution design on sound research. And that for me as a scholar is very exciting. And I know I have been asked the question, will it go national, international? Yes, it is possible to replicate this. In conclusion, in agreement with Donaldson, he has sentiments that have been quoted in Fallon G. L. Tal in their article, Building STEM in School. A positive school climate improves teachers' engagement and performance, builds morale, and enhances student achievement. So basically, if you are to ask, what was I exactly doing in Our Lady of Mercy Girls? I was changing and catalyzing change of the school environment so that eventually we can have girls performing better in the STEMs and eventually transition even to science-based careers. And with that, I'm done. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Wow, what a brilliant presentation, Margaret. Thank you so much for sharing all the details of your CSE alumni funded activity on girls' education and shedding light on your mentorship camp at the girls' school. I'm sure the attendees have found this insightful and inspiring as well. I will now open the floor to short Q&A session. Once again, thank you to all the share your questions in advance to the registration form. I do have a few questions to begin with, but please feel free to send in your questions via the chat box. We may not have enough time to address all the questions, but we'll try our best. So, Margaret, if you're ready, I have the first question for you.
Yeah.
All right. So the first question is, what are the two major bottlenecks your nation is encountering in its efforts towards attaining gender equality in access to secondary school education?
My apologies, sorry, I seem to have a bit of a net issue. Say that again, right. Let's see, that will be clear.
Thank you for bringing that to my notice. I might have internet issues today because of the heavy rain. I'm going to blame the rains today. I'm going to add the question in the chat box just so you have it as well. And then I will also repeat it one more time. So the question is, what are the two major bottlenecks your nation is encountering in its efforts towards attaining gender equality in access to secondary school education?
All right. Access is very interesting. One, you need to know our country is very vast. So if you're talking access, you're talking about the ability of learners to actually get to a school, if I get you right. So we don't have schools in every neighborhood. There are children who have to walk 3 hours to school and 3 hours back. So access is limited, first of all, just by the vastness and the distribution of school. And I don't know whether this is also a right thing to say, because access for me, it's just not getting to the school. It's also what happens when you get to the school and you find there's no teacher. Again, we have, especially in the arid, semi-arid areas where I work, not many people want to work there. So you'll find the staff thinly spread, some classes not covered. So they can come to the school, but it is not equivalent to learning taking place. Yep.
Thank you for your response. I think some of us can relate to the challenges that you mentioned in our own respective countries as well. So thank you for shedding light on that. The next question is, what are the practical limitations for girls taking up STEM careers? Have we thought about these limitations? I'm going to add the question again in the chat box in case I wasn't audible.
All right. Practical limitations for girls taking up STEM careers. Let me give you a very practical one. And I know there's somebody who had raised the issue of culture and environment. In one of the regions where I work, the only institute for TVET, which is the tertiary level, is many kilometers away. There is no parent in some of those environments who is going to trust the safety of the girls far away from home. So all together, they will not be released even if they got the scores. And that's a lot of negotiation that needs to take place, a practical limitation. So first of all, just getting there. Some of them don't even have mentors. So you may say, I'll be an aeronautic engineer, or I'll be a water engineer. They've never seen anything close to that. So they can't even envision, they can't even plan for that. These are some of the practical limitations that they have. And of course, the usual culprits. If you don't have money, then you can't enroll for the courses, even if you had been admitted. So those are some very, very practical limitations that we find. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Margaret, for your response on that question.
Sorry, I see a comment there saying these are not girl-specific problems. So some of the girl-specific problems include what I've said, the girl not being allowed by their mothers to go to a TVET institution and be a boarder because it means getting away from the homestead. The girl not having a girl mentor, so she has no view of what an engineer, an electric engineer coming from a helicopter looks like. Of course, there's a whole issue of her own self-belief. She has been told, girls should not be inquisitive. Girls should not, do not collaborate. Shouldn't talk when you're in the midst of boys. So those are some of practical things. So they have been socialized differently, and yet you need them to pull out some skills in a STEM environment of things that they have not done before. So when you say they are inquisitive, they should be inquisitive. That is a STEM skill, but they've been socialized. Do not be inquisitive. So if you find the village well has broken down, that is the space for men to repair. Women is to fetch the water. So they have been socialized also, and that limits some of the skills that they need practically for them to bridge into STEM subjects. Thanks.
Thank you, Margaret. Also, and thank you for capturing the notes that came through in the chat box. There's a question to clarify on your ASF activity. So the question is, how many schools were involved in your work?
Oh yeah, so this was one school. I wanted to turn, and I can assure you, you can hear the amount of work that went around turning around one school. As a project, I supervise 92 schools around the country. But for this implementation, I wanted to do an in-depth intervention in one school. And that's what I did. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for clarifying that, Margaret. The next question is, why is the focus only on STEM? There are other students doing arts, humanities, and other fields of studies, and they need career guidance too. So what are your thoughts on that?
Why my emphasis on STEM? One, as a country, we are saying we are becoming middle income. A lot of middle income will be dependent on innovations, science, innovations, whether in agriculture, in energy production, whatever it is. So a lot of the times, even just by statistics, a lot of our girls are not engaged in that sector. So if you don't enroll in that sector, you don't, first of all, contribute to it. You're not contributing very well in the economy, but also you're not benefiting from it. So while all these other areas are doing well, and as you can see even from the results, the students were really doing well in these other, even the computers and the arts, languages, that was doing very well. But where we need innovation is in the STEM. And must I say also, that is where there is also good pay. So we want the girls to actually maximize their potential, to also make a contribution to the economy. Thank you.
Yes, contributions to economy, well noted. So there's a question very similar to what we've just discussed around STEM and other fields of study. Don't you think enabling the students and teachers and seeing the interplay across various subjects, including STEM, could be more beneficial on the long term? For example, for students doing well in arts but not STEM.
Oh, yeah. I think what we are emphasizing is not one against the other. Like the winning piece I told you was the art and science students. So these students were a combination of art and sciences, and they actually saw the need of, the teacher has this tiny, weeny little bone trying to demonstrate something in front, but they have the spatial dimensions. They're able to see, what if we increase? We don't have a way of expanding that, but we can make a replication of it. And they actually used their art component to actually come up with replicas of science, the science, whatever they were showing of the bones, etc. So we are not saying one against the other. They actually need both. It is not that one is better than the other. We actually need both. So for me as an individual, I actually had just made a choice that the place I want to turn around was in STEM, because that was a felt need by the school, reported ably by the principal. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Margaret. The next question, actually, there are a lot of questions on this area that came through the registration form. And the question is, we do have Commonwealth scholars and alumni from across the Commonwealth. And the question that repeatedly came up was, is there scope to replicate this project in other countries or within other communities as well?
Yeah, because I said this is actually based from literature. So it is basically reading literature, seeing what are the discussions going around, how to improve school environment, how to change teacher perception. So it is reading literature, being able to identify those different components, and then from there, coming up with solutions. But of course, you've got to adapt. Then of course, you've got to think, who am I working with to help bring the solutions? Because your solutions need to also be evidence-based. And that you need. So the good thing is that science and science results are out in the public domain. So it is easy for you to actually come up with solutions in all these different areas. So it is completely replicable. Thank you.
Perfect. So with this, we do not have any more questions in the chat box, and we are coming to, oh, all right, there is a question, my bad. All right, so the final question is it safe to assume that the study on just one school is enough sample for a wide and practical solution implementation?
I think the first thing, I was actually not doing it for replication. I was actually doing it. So you can almost look at it mainly, first of all, as a case study. But I think there are lots of tenets there that can be packaged and maybe do a pilot with, especially schools in different contexts. So for mine was, for example, it was homogeneous. Girls from the slum area, so the kind of challenges coming in are homogeneous. So, but now we can do a bigger pilot, but now a pilot with schools in, again, different contexts, with different science needs, science inquiries, do a pilot of that, do our learnings before then we can say we can replicate. So there is room to learn from also different other scenarios. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. So we do have one more question that has just come in the chat box. And the question is how to deal with financial barriers while supporting students for science projects?
I think the word that comes to my mind is innovation. When we were training the teachers using the semester model, one of the topics we included was innovation, because we said students are told do not engage in science because here's a beaker, if you break it, that's it. We don't have one for the examination. So usually schools would hold back for examination purposes. So we taught them how to use localized materials and innovation. But sometimes you also need to ask schools to repurpose money. Let me give you an example, a very local example from me, that schools will have sports days funded by the government, who knows, music festival funded by the government. But if you ask the schools, Have you ever asked the Head Teachers Association to fund you for a science day? And they wonder, you mean you can actually have a science day funded? So I think we haven't also explored with the kitties that we have to maximize on it and make science and science exploration as one of our learning inquiries. And really, it's distribution of resources, whatever we have, maximizing on that. So innovation is very, very important. So like for Our Lady of Mercy, they didn't necessarily buy new beakers, but they said we have twigs, we have ropes in the neighborhood, or students can make ropes using grass. So they had things that they could immediately see an application and said, I think we can use that to bring a solution. And it worked. I mean, we saw the charcoal dust. That experiment took place in school. They didn't go anywhere to get that charcoal dust. It was within the school compound. So I'm sure it was a refuse somewhere in the corner of the school. So I think that is the kind of thinking we need also to bring to the schools. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's so important to use the resources that communities already have, especially in such innovative projects. Thank you so much for your response to that question. And with this, we come to an end of the Q&A session. Margaret, I would like to thank you for your amazing presentation on your Alumni Community Engagement Fund activity. What a brilliant presentation to mark International Literacy Day as well, and talk about access to education for girls, especially advocating for girls to take up more studies in science-related fields. So thank you once again, and I'm sure if you do have the time to browse through the messages in the chat box, it's filled with praise and appreciation for your presentation. So I would like to echo our attendees' thoughts. Thank you so much for your brilliant presentation. And I would also like to end the webinar recording now.